This is Green Mountain Mornings, and you're listening on 100.3 FM, AM 1490. I am your host, Olga Peters, and Randy Holhut from the Commons. If you are a good guest today, I'll give you a lollipop.
A Tootsie Pop?
I don't know, whatever happens to be left over from Halloween at the Commons still.
No, long gone. Even the Twizzlers disappeared.
Oh, boy. You know you're getting down to the bottom of the Halloween candy when the Twizzlers disappear. I want to remind folks that BCTV is here in the studio filming this segment of Green Mountain Mornings, and broadcast of Green Mountain Mornings tonight on BCTV is sponsored by Brattleboro Savings and Loan. So, Randy, it is, speaking of money and Halloween candy and all those lovely fun things and about getting a lollipop after something bad happens, it's budgeting season for most towns.
Yes, it is. And, town meeting is scant weeks away.
Yes, it is.
And that means the whole process of trying to figure out what's going to be, how much money needs to be appropriated to pay for all the functions that run Brattleboro.
Mm-hmm.
And a constant battle between how much money do we need and how much do we have to raise the taxes by.
Right.
And we've seen over the past few years that the budgeting has been responsible, and the spending has not been extravagant, and if anything, it's been a struggle just to come up with money to take care of essentials.
Mm-hmm. And there's been a lot of delayed maintenance on infrastructure as well.
Yes, and the old you can pay now or pay later problem. Trying to save money now by cheaping out on infrastructure maintenance, or by trying to stretch a little, one more year out of a dump truck or a fire truck means spending a lot more money later.
Exactly.
And Peter Elwell, the town manager, to his credit, has been really pushing hard to get the town to think about, you got to start planning ahead for capital purchases.
Mm-hmm.
You got to expect that, okay, this is the lifespan of a dump truck. By the end of the lifespan of the dump truck, you should have some money saved up to buy its replacement.
Right.
So you don't have to borrow money.
Yeah, and it kind of hurts a little bit up front because you're taking money and putting it in a fund, and it's frustrating to look at that money in a fund when you have other expenses. But he's right. Over the long haul, you do less bonding and less debt.
And you save money by that, even though, interest rates are creeping back up again. But the last few years the borrowing rates have been so low. It's been hard to make that argument.
Mm-hmm.
Because if anything, with the rates so low, you should have been borrowing more to take advantage.
Right.
Since you're getting nearly free money.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone likes nearly free money.
So what do you think of, Elwell for Brattleboro has done a lot with long-term planning since he came here, 4 years ago now?
Thereabouts.
What do you think of his long-term planning as someone who's watched the town of Brattleboro build many, many budgets over the years?
Well, think of what it was like beforehand, before Barbara Sondag and John Leisnerring saved Brattleboro.
Mm-hmm.
Think of the mess they were in when they, the account where the select board was kind of double entry accounting almost, where they were writing two checks when there was only money for one.
Oh, okay. See, that was before my time.
No, that was
about the time Barbara
during the multimodal muddle.
Okay.
As we called it, the mishandling of funds for the transportation center,
mm-hmm.
and the multimodal center they were supposedly building down there.
Okay.
And the total chaos of bookkeeping at the municipal center, and how everyone dove under the desk when the reckoning came, and the federal government threatened to take the money back.
Wow. That must have been dramatic, because I have to say, I have noticed since the time I started at the Commons, which would have been the summer of 2009, to now, that when I cover the town budget, that the meetings have become far less dramatic over the past few years. There used to be a lot more hair pulling.
Yes, and that's thanks to Peter's predecessor, Barbara Sondag, who really did a bang-up job as town manager, trying to clean up the mess that her predecessors left for her. And John Weisingring, who was the financial officer at the time too, who also dove into the thankless job of straightening out the books.
Yeah.
So, when Peter Elwell walked in, and he was bringing with him the experience he had from being town manager down in Palm Beach, Florida. Huge town compared to Brattleboro, but
yeah, huge
the
budgets.
principles are still the same. There's only a finite amount of government of state and federal money that can keep you afloat, and you have to look at your property, your grand list. I don't know what they call it in Florida, but and see what the grand list can support for town services. And Brattleboro, for a town of 12,000, has an enviable list of town services that are provided. I mean, the Gibson Aiken Center and Memorial Park and the whole Recreation and Parks Department is probably one of the best of a town its size in the country. We have one of the best fire departments in Vermont. We have a well-staffed police department, or at least it's approaching well-staffed again as the current class gets out of the academy and starts taking their positions. We have a great public works department and the water and sewer people.
Right.
We really have a well-run municipal operation. But to have that well-run municipal operation takes money.
Yes, it does, and that was one thing that Elwell recently told the select board at the November 20th meeting was, it's great. Some revenues are up, like the rooms and meals tax, but we still have a lot of infrastructure that needs to be brought up to spec.
You've written about it. The drain pipes underneath that are 100 years old or more and can't handle the new climate we're living in now.
Yeah, if folks wonder why the stretch of road in front of the post office to Main Street tends to flood when we have these, temporarily flood, well, we have these big deluge storms, it's because the 100-year-old pipes are a little too narrow for the 21st century storms.
And all the blacktop that
that's the other thing.
Water
There's
go
more
running down the hill and into the Main Street.
Yeah, more impervious surfaces. Hey, Randy, we have to go to commercial break, but I think this is important, talking about infrastructure. And we also, in the next break, want to talk about the 1% local option tax, which has gone back on the warning for representative town meeting.
We're proof that bad ideas never die.
Yes, this is attempt number 7. Hey, we are back, and this is Green Mountain Mornings on 100.3 FM, AM 1490. I'm your host, Olga Peters, and my guest is Randy Holhut from the Commons. Hey, Randy.
Hello again.
Hello again. So, Randy, I have to say, the 1% local option tax is gone back on the warning for representative town meeting, which means who knows if it will pass or not, but it's on the warning. The select board approved that 3-1 this week. I have to say, as a cockeyed optimist, I appreciate this because, this is the 7th attempt at passing or bringing this to the community. So I have to say, if the optimist in me appreciates those multiple attempts.
And as I said earlier, proof that a bad idea never dies.
Yes, the Eeyore in you is very not happy.
No, as long as there's a New Hampshire, so long as there's a tax-free New Hampshire, and retail on this side of the river, you can see what's happened. When was the last time there was any kind of store that opened up on this side of the river of any size? Aldi's.
Yeah.
That's it. And that but in terms of a retail store, there's nothing that has happened since Home Depot came and went.
Well, yeah, big retail store. I mean, we've had like Ruggles and Hunt move to this
those,
area and stuff like that.
What's on Main Street now is pretty much for the tourist trade. There's, Baker's is no longer there.
I know, right?
Galantis is no longer there. Mann's is no longer there. Mm-hmm. Brown and Roberts is pretty much it in terms of coming to town and looking for practical items. And most of that is because people have hopped in their cars and gone to Keene, and that's where all the stores are.
Right.
And that and combine that and the other whammy of Amazon, the Amazon monster, which is coming to get you. Blah, blah, blah.
Gobble, gobble, gobble.
Yeah, and I mean, granted, the state is now actually trying to enforce paying internet tax. Tax on internet purchases, and it was a nice ride while it lasted. Having your own little New Hampshire in your computer.
Yeah. Although I do want to point out that when it comes to so Vermont has, as a state, it allows towns 3 local option taxes. One is room and meals. One is alcohol,
which Brattleboro has it.
And then this local option tax. Now, I just want to point out, and a lot of people like to say, oh, it's tax-free New Hampshire. New Hampshire does have a meals tax. And I think, I'll have to check some of my receipts, but it may be as high as 9%. And I think they also have an alcohol tax. So it's not 100% tax-free New Hampshire. I just want that in context while we're talking.
But we're thinking in terms of the local option tax, in terms of the sales tax, and and the fact is how many people go to New Hampshire and to buy stuff.
Right.
And technically, you're supposed to be paying your Vermont sales tax. And I noticed on the your income tax form, there's a little notation there where you write in, okay, all right, I did buy a bunch of stuff in New Hampshire last year. I'll pay X amount here. If your accountant is pure of heart, he or she will tell you better pay that.
My accountants have said that. In fact, I think they said you might as well just pay this, because when the state starts looking, you don't want to be the one they knock on. You don't want to be your door that they knock on.
Yes.
So I've always paid it in my tax return.
And yes, I realized, with Brattleboro that and the rich amount of services that we provide, and the amount of the needs that need to be met, that the money has to come from somewhere. But it's more of a case of there's less resources available from the state. There's definitely less resources available from the federal government, and the only money we seem to get anymore is the community block grants. When Senator Leahy and Senator Sanders comes to town with a big check, or our friends at USDA Rural Development drop money on us. But that gravy train, I think, will be ending under the current administration.
Yeah. Well, I think what it is with the 1% option tax is, to be honest, I am not sure how much traffic it would drive to Keene or Hinsdale. I think folks who are shopping, there are so many factors that go into making purchases that I think folks who are shopping in Keene and Hinsdale are already going there. When folks who shop local, they've made different decisions. But here's what I do think is an issue, and it's a bigger issue beyond just the 1% option tax, is I think as participants in the Vermont economy and the regional Windham County economy, we workers, at least, are freaking exhausted. We work so many hours for so little return, and economic development speak, the return of investment, the ROI for workers in this economy is just dismal. And
Yes.
so it's that kind of death by 1,000 cuts.
Well, working longer and harder for less and less money, and real wages for all workers, nationwide has barely kept up with inflation over the last 3 decades or so. Mm-hmm. And guess where all the money's been going? The wealth that's been created has been going.
Up the food chain, not throughout the food chain.
Well, as John Kenneth Galbraith once called it, the oats and the sparrows theory of economics, where you feed more oats to the horse in the hope that what comes out the other end will be there for the sparrows to eat.
Right. Also known as trickle-down economics.
Or trickle-on economics,
yeah.
as Jim Hightower would call it.
Yeah. Now, just in the town's defense, I will say Peter Elwell said something interesting to me when I had him on the show this week. He said, as you mentioned, a lot of services to fund in the town budget. And he said, I think the statistic he gave me was, well, anyway, more than 50% of the town budget comes from residential property tax rather than, say, a commercial property tax. Because we've reached a point in this this community where the residential property owners just outpaced the commercial property, when we lost our manufacturing and everything. And he said, this $600,000 a year that the 1% option tax could potentially bring in would offset that almost 80% of the budget that's being paid by residents. That this tax could be a tax relief for property owners. What's your thoughts?
Good theory. Mm-hmm. But we still could use a little more could use more businesses in town paying property taxes. We have so much of the nonprofit sector, and I shouldn't throw stones because we're a nonprofit too, mm-hmm. is considerable. And we need more. We could also use more pilot or payment in lieu of taxes by some of our nonprofits.
That funding formula by the state is really I don't think it's been updated in quite a few years.
But you look at going back to to retail, commercial. That's how many vacancies there are in the two plazas on Putney Road. Mm-hmm. I mean, Home Depot's still sitting there. It's bones bleached in the sun for a decade now.
Yeah.
And where the old Grand Union was there in the Royal Plaza, there's still spaces that have been empty for several years now. Mm-hmm. And and we keep hearing rumblings that Staples might close because they're not doing enough business. Mm-hmm. And Peoples, you wonder how they stay in business. Mm-hmm. and it's just retail is the modern retail now is if you don't have a store that's at least 120 to 150,000 square feet, it's you can't open a store.
Right. Okay.
And there's nothing in Brattleboro that size. I mean, the Home Depot before was, I think that was the old Ames. That's about 60 to 70,000 square feet, which once upon a time was fine.
Right.
I mean, we all liked Ames, didn't we?
Yeah.
Could get in, get out. Prices were okay.
Could buy socks and underwear. Yep.
Yep. And now it's gone. Mm-hmm. And all those stores are that size.
Yeah.
And now, the what killed them, Walmart, they're on the ropes because of the next innovation, which is Amazon and online retailing. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have to put on your pants to go shopping,
why would you?
Yeah.
Hey Randy, I want to really make a quick right-hand turn here because we only have about 2 minutes left.
Okay.
I want to talk about a story that you'll be working on this week, and that's about, speaking of funding funding from Comcast or the cable companies to BCTV might be cut or is in threatening of being cut. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, but there's no FCC rule change coming up. That since 1984, I believe, there's been a federal law saying that if you're a cable operator, you, for in exchange for having the franchise for operating in a municipality, you're required to provide funding and facilities for a public access station that would cover town government and other, educational activity, and provide the spectrum space on your system to broadcast it. And this is what helped create public access television all over America, and is what's kept it vibrant, more or less.
Right.
After all these years, and the new FCC chair has been busy trying to cut as many public good requirements out of the federal law as possible. This is the thinking that's killing killing the various parts of net neutrality.
Yeah.
From the internet. So this is the same principle of the cable companies for years have just wanted to free themselves from having to pay for the cost of public access television, and for the channels themselves, this is critical because Cor Trowbridge, the manager of BCTV, was saying that's 85% of our budget.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing that really concerns me about these changes is not just how they could impact a local station like BCTV and a very vibrant local station like BCTV, but it is that whole mental cultural shift that is happening at a place like the FCC, where this notion of public good and this notion of giving people access to information and knowledge and experience that they may not be able to access because of geography or access because of their own resources, that type of access helps people enrich their lives, but it can also help people change their lives. And that's the importance of a newspaper like the Commons or a public library, public education, public access like BCTV. And it's that cultural shift that's happening in the federal government that really concerns me the most, that this thought that we as a country do not need to support these things that help people give people access, basically.
Why do we need libraries? We have bookstores.
Right.
Why do we need to provide the lifeline service for people with telephones? So they can, it's not important. Why do we need public access television? There's 30 other channels they can watch. Right. Well,
and we should even be worried, with so many things that were free to air. You used to be able to just grab an antenna, put it on the top of your roof, and you could get PBS, CBS, ABC, NBC, these free to air channels. And, even that is starting to get harder to access when you have to we've reached a point where you have to buy a cable package or pay for Hulu or pay for any of those other services. I mean, I love my Netflix, but there is an important thing about free to air.
Well, that's more of the changes from analog to digital television.
Right.
And I think that got oversold a bit. It offered more spectrum space to broadcasters. You notice, like say with Vermont PBS, they have the digital being digital allows them to have 4 channels.
Right.
On the same spot. The downside for a place like Vermont is where you used to be able to put up the rabbit ears and get fuzzy channels or subsistence television is the digital signal doesn't travel as far.
Right.
So unless you live right in an urban area like in Burlington, you could probably get away with not having cable because you could be able to pick up the network television. With a antenna, but you can't do that anymore in most of Vermont.
And unfortunately, on that note, we're out of time, but keep an eye on the comments for Randy's interview with Core from BCTV about this really important issue. Hey, Randy, thanks for being on the show today.
Thank you.